Listen, babe.
Welcome to
Coco Caliente. Coco Caliente has an exciting guest today, and we're actually these are my favorite conversations. I call him like the experts on expert, like Dax has, but I don't want to steal his name. But he's just a professional, Dr. Adolph Brown III.
Yes, it's one of those where I just sit back and listen and have like tears in my eyes. I'm like, this is just such an amazing conversation, and I just let them do their thing. I let Victor work his magic and listen to the intelligence radiating from the guests, and I just I'm here, but not really here.
Yeah, so you're definitely going to enjoy. Hello.
Hi.
Sorry, that was my fault. I'm supposed to be the one managing the Zoom actual recorder, and I didn't have your audio on.
Okay.
Welcome. My name is Victor, and
Nicole. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Nicole. Thanks for having me.
So, Dr. Adolph Brown III, correct?
Yes.
You know what? There's not a lot of us out there because I'm Victor Arroyo III, and Nicole rolls her eyes every time I add that in there, and I'm like, babe, you just don't understand. And the difficulty to even get to the third, right?
Exactly.
To keep that name, and then so I tell her, like, okay, so when we have a boy, his name's going to be Victor, right? And you can name whatever child after that, but just the first boy is going to be Victor Arroyo IV.
That's right. I have a fourth.
You do?
Oh, cool.
Yes.
Do you fall into this? Because I always have this thought, like, down the line, like, your great-grandson will be, the sixth? Yeah. Yeah, isn't that such, like, an awesome, like, when you start getting to those, where you have to start doing, like, the two, IV or VI, the Roman numerals, like, that seems, like, very royal.
Yeah, it keeps it going. It's like you said, the third was significant. It took a minute, and then the fourth, and we have a grandbaby, and I'm Adolph, but he's Aiden. So that's our first. So
that's awesome. Well, anyway, Doctor, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us today. As I was doing our research before talking to you, you have so many different accolades and titles, and you do so many things, and you span so many different topics and categories of things. How do you describe yourself?
I think basically as someone that just wants to impact this world in a positive way. Okay.
And you're a doctor in what did you get your doctorate in?
Clinical psychology.
So tell us your background. Like how did that come to be? Where were you raised, and were you
Sure.
Did you always want to be a clinical psychologist?
Okay. Just the skinny of it. Mom and dad were happily married, solidly middle class. Dad woke up one day and married 5 children later and said he didn't want that anymore. And when he left, my mother, to afford our home or a different home, we moved to the inner city projects.
Oh, wow.
And that was very different for all of us. I was young, but I could definitely feel the emotional toll that it had on my older siblings. My oldest sibling and only brother, Oscar, in the absence of my dad. My grandfather also later. And my oldest brother was murdered when I was 11.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry.
So lots of hardships and things that I encountered. But I was fortunate to have a pretty decent educators who cared, a mother who would just do anything to ensure that we had what we needed and even some of the things that we wanted. And about a couple hours away, I had a grandparents who were farmers. And whenever I didn't necessarily do how I was told in the inner city, I was sent to stay with my grandfather and grandmother. And I have to say that much of who I am today, I attribute to the man that my grandfather was. So I'd get in trouble and I'd have to walk the perimeter of the farm with him. And that was really tough because I'm an introvert. I'm a classic introvert. And for those that don't know that term, it doesn't mean we're shy by any means. It just means we don't get our energy from others. You know, I get my energy from reading, from being alone and things of that nature. Extroverts get it from socializing and other things.
Yeah.
And then my grandfather would literally talk me to death on those walks and say things like, "You see those cows? They're eating grass." I'm like, "Really?" and we'd walk off a couple steps, and he'd say something like, "You see, they're content with eating that grass right there. They're not waiting to eat grass somewhere else." And he would say, "The rule of this is to be happy where you are. Enjoy the moment. Don't hold your breath." He would say classic things like that all the time. And he only had a third grade farm school education.
Oh, wow.
And those farm schools, and I think, Nicole, I think you might know a little bit about farming.
Yeah, I do.
Yes, she does.
I did my homework. Farm schools where all the grade levels are in one room. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, my grandfather to this day is the wisest man I ever known. So he would say things like, when it came to money and success, he would say it's not the amount of money you make, but the amount of money you keep. Just all those things would stick with me. And he only had a third grade farm school education, and he told me that I had to be better than him. He told me that, it broke my heart, because at that age, I guess I was kind of a teenager, no one was better than my grandfather.
Yeah.
And for him to say that, it kind of just concerned me. And but I realized what he was saying. He wanted me to go farther than he did in education. So I did, and graduated high school. Was the first person in my family of 5 to graduate high school.
Oh, wow.
Went to a college called the College of William and Mary, which is considered by some the oldest college in our nation, at least the first chartered. And I tell people that the type of kid I was, when my school counselor told me I could go to the College of William and Mary, I told her that how can one person go to 2 colleges at the same time? But went to college, started off majoring in psychology and anthropology, and was also an athlete. Boxing was a huge part of my upbringing. Based on moving to the inner city, there were a lot of bullies and things of that nature. Never started a fight, but people would sometimes try to take things from me.
Yeah.
And my grandfather, he wasn't familiar with public education. So he told me if people would try to take things from me, I should give it back to them in such a way that they'd never try it again. And and he never came he was never on time for the school conferences because he drove a tractor. So he was always late. But anyway, boxing and martial arts had helped me to such a great extent that, I did some of that, went to college, also had an academic and track scholarship at that time. I was a wrestler and had to make a choice between wrestling and track. Went there and thought that one day I would be, even though I had a track and wrestling, or could have been track and wrestling, I loved baseball, and I always wanted to be a professional baseball player.
No kidding.
But after taking anthropology, not necessarily psychology, undergraduate psychology is not what people think. It's kind of more theory. But after taking anthropology, I realized that I really like people. Mm-hmm. And that began my quest to first understand about myself. That's why I majored in psychology. I wanted to know I wanted to know more about me and the way I behaved and the way I thought. And I thought I was different. And when I found out about that stuff, then I said, you know what, I can help other people with it. And that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So with COVID right now, I know everybody's at their house. There's a lot of downtime to think about a lot of stuff. And BetterHelp is there to help you. So if you're having any thoughts of depression, or you have stress, anxiety, relationship issues, trouble sleeping, anger, BetterHelp is there for you. They're counselors that can talk with you in as quick as 24 hours. They have counselors in all 50 states, and they'll help assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist.
In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states.
So this is not self-help. It's professional counseling. You can send a message to your counselor anytime, and you'll be connected in a safe and private online environment. Everything you say is confidential. It's very convenient, professional, and affordable. And you can check out the testimonials that are posted daily on their site. Again, this is not a crisis hotline, but this is a professional counselor that has services available for clients worldwide. I want you to start living a happier life today. As a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/Coco. Join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Coco. Having the journey that you have, especially with the things in your upbringing, like, I've never found myself, and neither has Nicole, in a point where, we're living in, government housing or in poverty or anything like that. Do you ever think back, now that you're in the position that you are now and did the studies that you are, do you ever go back to like, wow, things could have been completely different had I not had that loving mother or that supportive grandfather, and just kind of what could have been? Do you ever go through those thoughts?
All the time, but a tad bit differently. I often look at the richness of poverty. Most of the time when you hear people talk about poverty and inner city or rural poverty, for that matter, we talk about kind of the maladaptive side of it. Mm-hmm. I talk about the richness of it to the extent that I probably would say, for my wife, of all the things that would bother her about me, would be the fact that I've been poor and I'm not afraid to be poor. That, so that definition of women insecurity out the window with me. But no, when I talk about the richness of poverty, I talk about the fact that I know how to live with very little, and I still do that today. We're the parents of 8 children. From 30 all the way to 17. Oh, wow. And
good for you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. College graduates, quite successful kids. We've been able to afford a decent living, but we've never lived, as my grandfather would say, outside of our means.
Yeah.
Could definitely afford homes on different coasts, and and occasionally we'll splurge, but when we do it. It has to make sense. If I'm going to fly a private jet, then it has to make sense that I have to get home for something that I can't miss.
Yeah.
So there's a richness of poverty, things that taught me. We had a hurricane here once, and my wife is from New York, and I'm from Virginia, and we met at the College of William and Mary. And I used to say that, I married up, and she would, and I would say that because when I met her, she would tell me about her home and her dog and a cat. Immediately when she said she had a dog and a cat, I'm like, oh, she's rich. She's got to be rich. Extra mouths to feed. So
yeah.
But we had a storm, and East Coast storm, and the lights were out, and my neighbors were just like acting as if it was the end of the world. And I'm teaching my kids how to do wall puppets, shadow puppets. Mm-hmm. I pull out the grill and put the charcoal on. I'm making breakfast on the grill outside. Those are things that I learned growing up. Mm-hmm. Those are things that. There was a richness in my poverty, and what I say when I talk about that is, the white or the silver lining. I call it dancing through the storms of life. That I think the truest testament is being positive in a negative situation, and that's kind of who my mom was.
And that's so true, because and I can't say that I experienced it to the extent that maybe you did, but just, for example, even trying to be on my own out of college with like little to no money, just making ends meet, those are learning experiences as you grow up. So when, now that I do have a better job and I do make some better money, you make smarter decisions opposed to when your whole life, let's say from the time you're born, you're spoon-fed and everything just comes to you. Mm-hmm. You don't want to work as hard for it. And Nicole talks about this a lot. Her dad, working over 100 hours a week and driving 3 hours to work and back, both ways. And, basically the what it is to earn the money and actually, know what it is, not just, I have it because I have it and now I can just buy anything that I want. You know what I mean?
I get it. And that's something that my children won't necessarily have the benefit. I know we kind of started the conversation talking about it not necessarily being a benefit.
Yeah.
But my children won't necessarily have that benefit of knowing the true earning. Mm-hmm. And one of the things my wife and I did in our trust was, when I travel so much for a living, that it was always important for me that if I didn't make it home, that my wife and children would be okay.
Yeah.
So that in our trust, we have the children don't just get a lump sum, no trust fund kids, but whatever you earn that year as your salary, that's what you're able to draw from the trust.
Oh, okay. That's really,
that's smart.
That's very smart.
What an incentive.
Exactly. So if you don't work, then guess what?
Yeah, you get nothing. That's a good way to put it. Oh man.
So that's kind of how I'm trying to keep the integrity, there. I mean, I'm the guy that when you look at my wife's side of the closet and you look at my side, I mean, I don't like a bunch of choices. If I buy something, then I'm donating something away in its place. And all of that is from my upbringing. Now that upbringing can be twofold, as you know, and I think that's what you were kind of alluding to. I have colleagues that have gone on to the NFL and we came up with, meager means, and they have 6 or 7 cars.
Yeah.
And you can only drive one at a time.
Mm-hmm.
You have a home, beside a mansion, and, you have 2 kids. So, there's an extreme, and I tend to kind of, my wife would say I'm on the other extreme. I thought I was kind of in the middle, but I still don't pour a full glass of a drink, because if I want more, I'll get more, but I don't want to waste it if I don't finish it.
Yeah, and that's a good point, too, because I feel like most people, and it doesn't matter actually what level in society that you are, if you come into a lot of money or you start making a good money, I'd say most people will be on the splurging ends of things. And I think, and I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but especially when it comes to the education side, that's something that we lack in teaching kids, when they're in school, budgeting, accounting.
Exactly. You're so you're so correct. My grandfather, my mother, I remember getting tenure as a young professor, and it was a big deal. Not tenure, but it was an even bigger deal because I was a very young professor, and it meant I had a job stability for life. It meant all kinds of things.
Yeah.
My salary almost doubled. And every time I would take those kind of accolades to the elders in my family, they would say, okay, but make sure you save for a rainy day.
Yeah.
So it was take the wind out of my sails. So, I'd buy a new car and they're like, bring it and show it to me. And I show it to them and they're like, hey, are you saving for a rainy day? So what has happened when this pandemic first hit, and I was getting all these emails from friends and things of that nature, I decided to, and, people were saying that, I was kind of being naive and overly optimistic. But, it is that rainy day that the elders of my family told me about, and I was prepared. We're prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's something that I think about that now. And this is definitely a time of reflection for a lot of people, because of what we're talking about right now, right? Everything can be fine and dandy, and the way our economic system's set up to where, you make enough money to pay the money that you already borrowed for the things that you have now, right? Those 5 cars or that bigger house or that TV. Right. And now it's like, oh crap, maybe I should have just lived within my means and only buy it if I can buy it twice. That's one of
I love that. That's my philosophy.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I got it from a less ideological rapper, Jay-Z, but it's so true, right? Don't buy it unless you can buy it twice, and then that way you never find yourself in a position like a lot of people find themselves now, where they can't make their next payment, right? And that's a really sad truth that we're in right now.
So what we have is we have self-reflection without self-correction.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So, really self-reflection without doing any work on top of that is kind of where we are as a society now. We have a pause, so to speak. Life has given the entire world a pause. Now, what are people doing with it? I mean, if you look in the mirror and you're basically accepting, and that's cool, but to reflect and assess, there's room for everyone to do some correction. And I think self-reflection and self-correction are two of the most humbling things that human beings can be involved in. But it's two of the most challenging things for human beings to be involved in.
Absolutely. And it's something that's always ever changing. And it takes something like this to happen. But then as soon as everything goes back to normal and the economy is better and everybody has their jobs, they can fall right back into that same cycle. I mean, it's easy to.
Exactly.
So something that I do regularly is kick Victor's butt in the game Best Fiends, which is an app.
I am actually
game.
doing better than her. Anyway,
No,
so
you're
Best
not.
Fiends, if you're looking for a fun way to pass the time while engaging your brain and enjoying breathtaking visuals and a gripping story, your answer is Best Fiends. They have a bunch of characters that you can collect, little monsters, and you can watch them grow.
They're so cute.
And it's
but the
basically,
thing is like they're cuter when they're little, and then like as you get points and stuff, you can make them older, and then they're like not as cute anymore. So I'm like, I don't want them to grow up, but I am growing up on the level, so I have no choice.
Yeah, Best Fiends is a casual game anyone can enjoy, but it's made for adults. It's challenging, it's puzzle related, and it's a real brain teaser.
And I like that you don't have to you can play anywhere. Like
you can play
don't
offline.
need, yes. You
or
don't
in
need
airplane mode.
Wi-Fi, yeah.
Absolutely. It's a unique and exciting puzzle experience unlike any other puzzle game out there.
And the game changes depending on what season it is, if there's a holiday. So it's always updated, it's always fresh, it's always new.
Yeah, exactly. So it's easy to engage your brain with fun puzzles and collect tons of cute characters. Trust me, with over 100 million downloads, this 5-star rated mobile puzzle game is a must play.
So download Best Fiends for free on the Apple App Store or Google Play. That's friends without the R, Best Fiends. I know something too that you talk about is mental health through this pandemic. For me, I've actually gotten a lot better with my anxiety. It's almost completely just gone away, which is it's crazy to me. I think I needed everything to kind of pause and needed to reflect and have time to work on myself. And I'm just so grateful that that's what happened instead of it worsening. And are you seeing mental health worsening throughout the pandemic or getting better?
I see it worsening. Mm-hmm. However, people who are actually committed to self-reflection and examining their life and their behaviors, those individuals are getting better.
Okay.
However, individuals that are still attempting to control everything around them and not necessarily stepping back and saying, what can't I control versus what I can't control, I see it getting worse. In fact, I did an interview not too long ago, and I said, if we continue on this path, at least in mental health, that we'll have USA will be the United States of anxiety.
Yeah.
And that's what you're seing. Mm-hmm. With all the things that are happening now, whenever there's a tragedy in our world, the response is overcorrection. That's what we do, overcorrection. And that's what I can give you tons of examples. I mean, we're reacting based on emotion as opposed to separating our emotion from our thinking. So you'll have this pendulum swing all the way to the left where we're doing all these things that people are like, really? And what it is overcorrection. And, it's not until we truly evaluate things, the pros and the cons, and removing the emotion, that we get to some center ground.
Do you think that these, you can call them knee-jerky reactions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think that happens more so now than, let's say, it used to because of the advent of social media? Because everything gets put out there and people want to I think it's that and politics, right? The social media pushing like politicians to make corrections now without adequate, discussion or research on what is the best way to, pursue something?
Well, I think it's been there, just like the other ills that we have in society.
Yeah.
I think with social media, it's getting videotaped.
Yep.
So I think I can tell you times so one of the major social corrections of our time has been political correctness. Mm-hmm. And people, we got to be polite and kind, and I get that. However, when you start censoring comedians and comedic relief oftentimes and talks about things with a twist, with a surprise element, and so we tend to overcorrect. Just and I think what knee jerky. I think that's I say that. And I experienced it in England long before we got on the bandwagon here in the U.S. I'd left my BlackBerry at the lectern after one of my classes. Mm-hmm. And a gentleman came up to me after the event, and he had my BlackBerry in his hand. And he said, Dr. Brown, you left your, and I'm reaching for it, but he's trying to tell me, I can see my BlackBerry in his hand. And he says, you've left your African-American berry. And that was a time that I saw that there was a really kind of overcorrection when it comes to political correctness.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect example because he didn't want to feel like he's offending, right?
Right, but it was absurd.
Yeah.
It was absurd. So yeah, and that's what we have right now. And if everyone just take a breather and take a pause and the work. I get people asking me about books for mental health, books for racial justice, social justice. And, I write them. But at the same time, I tell people, if you really want to do something, look in your mirror. It starts with the individuals. If we talk about systemic racism, systems aren't built. Individuals build systems. So it starts with the people. The mirror is our best source of change or inspiration or both. So that's the hardest concept for people because it takes a certain type of individual to truly look in the mirror and see not just the good, but the ugly as well.
And so does this connect with your breaking down that empathy gap? Is that how that ties in?
It does. Yeah. And the empathy gap basically talks about, it goes back to brain research, which is often left out when we talk about bias and diversity.
Yep.
We jump right into it. We don't tell people that the true issue is we have to protect our mouths from our brains. That's the true issue. We all have implicit biases. If you have a brain, you have bias. You have implicit bias. And what all that means is that the brain teaches us without our permission. The brain gets over like 400 billion messages a second. And, we're not capable of truly discerning each message. But I tell people when it comes to human interactions, give it a second thought. Give it the benefit of the doubt. And don't necessarily believe everything you think because the brain does not help us to be correct. It helps us to be efficient. There's a huge difference.
And so, because I saw they have a Harvard test online that you can take for implicit bias, and it'll tell you kind of where you fall on the spectrum. Do you think tests like that are pretty accurate? Or do you think like those human-driven tests are kind of like, well, you can kind of steer it one way or another?
Yeah, you can pick
Exactly. Again, I go back, to the mirror. Ultimately, the individual taking the test knows what biases they have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The issue has become when we try to do this work publicly in professional development settings, when people are truly being authentic and they say things without necessarily challenging what their brain is giving them, they could leap, they came in. So the true issue here is not believing everything you think, challenging it. The brain puts things in categories. It doesn't mean it's correct. And one of the issues is the brain doesn't like to be wrong. So that implicit bias, the brain is then looking for things to confirm it. And that's called confirmation bias. So we shouldn't believe everything we think. We have to, if I'm watching the news and the news is giving me X, Y, Z, and, my brain is putting it there, when I meet a person that may fit the characteristics of what the news gave me, I have to treat that person as an individual, not necessarily that information that the news gave me.
Yeah. Yeah, and
that's hard work. That's intentional.
I think that's very true because I have an easy time in my day-to-day, and sometimes to a fault, giving people the benefit of the doubt. But that also comes from life experiences, from being raised around the world, military family, living in New Orleans for 15 years. And, anyway, it just comes from experiences. And when you find people that live in just different pockets of society for, better part of 20, 30, 40 years, however long you live there, you don't have those experiences or those connections with people. And then they fall into that, what I see on TV and what I don't see around me. And if the only interaction I'm getting from other people in different parts of society is from media, then I could see exactly what you're talking about, right? They see that's a confirmation for them. This is what's happening. These are these types of people, and this is what they do. Then, that's what you're going to believe.
I was talking to my 17-year-old recently, and some of the music that he listens to. And I told him when I was growing up, there was a genre of music called gangster rap. And I told him that I believe, and I haven't seen the research for it yet, but I do travel enough to kind of see some things. Yeah. And I told him, I said, I think gangster rap really pushed the empathy gap. It widened it. And what was happening is the negative things that were expressed in this music, the music was getting media attention. Mm-hmm. And then people started, individuals that didn't look like them necessarily were the people in these songs.
Yep.
So, we had a really good discussion about that. But that empathy gap is exactly what you said, is when I live in my world, you live in your world, and I haven't attempted to understand you or even listen to you, and I'm using what my brain has given me about you to think about you. And as a result of that, there's an empathy gap. And the only way to bridge that is through listening, through understanding. And, more than just wearing someone else's shoes, it's actually just trying to attempt to understand what it would be like if you were in that situation.
Yep, absolutely.
When it came to the protest, I would often challenge people to say, what would it take for you to do that? Don't say you'd never do that, because none of us know what we would do until we're in that situation.
Absolutely.
But what would it take for you? What would it take for you to do that? What would it take? How would you respond if it were your son, if it were your daughter that was a victim of these types of things? And that's the empathy. And that empathy isn't from a Harvard test. That empathy is not from the next great book you read. That empathy is done in the privacy of your home, in your mind, in your heart. When I'm watching the news, what's the narrative that I'm saying in my head? Am I watching the news saying, oh, those people are just so, they're just out of control. I just can't believe this. Or do I ask myself, because that's my narrative, if that's what I'm saying to myself. Yeah. Or do I say, wow, I wonder how that mother or that child or the child of that victim is going to grow up without a father. Those are the empathic responses that I encourage. And those don't happen with the test. Those happen with you.
Yeah. And the other thing, it's like, this is where I have a problem with, let's say somebody does know that they have this implicit bias, right? And they want to change, right? Or they want to take this training. It's the environment where the training is happening has to be accepting of a person to be open and honest, and then not be scrutinized or judged or thrown on Facebook or social media for trying to change and being open. You know what I mean?
I get it. I get it 100%. If you look at the research right now, on implicit bias training, diversity training, you'd see a whole lot of things that talk about how it does not work. But what they're missing is the neuroscience foundation. And I probably talk more about the brain than I do individuals in my first master class with it, because we all have a brain. Yeah. And I'm not pointing at one group or another. Mm-hmm. I'm pointing to everyone. We all have implicit biases. Now, what we do with them will determine what people think about us. So I tell people all the time, a racist statement does not a racist make. Because there's something called implicit bias.
Yeah.
Now think about this. If we basically said all the things that our brain gives us, how many of us would be employed?
Yeah. How
many of us would have any friends? Think about how many of us would be married.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I usually end every class, whether I'm talking about mental health, social injustice, or I end every class by having everyone repeat one word. And I say, everyone repeat after me, humankind. And they say humankind. Now, human and kind. And when I talk about being human, I'm not just talking about the fact that we're flesh. I'm talking about being humane to others. When I talk about being kind, it's different from being nice. I tell people nice is being reactive. Basically, nice is saying, I treat people how they treat me. That's reactive. Kindness is proactive. Unconditional, positive human regard just because. Mm-hmm. And I ask, and then I say, what would be wrong with treating people better than they treat you? And I finish. And that's kind of where I kind of leave things. I think the brain research, you know, they want things black and white, black or white. And this is where the anxiety comes, because most people don't know that the majority of our lives is actually lived in the gray.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you, the sooner you can accept that, and the sooner you realize that you're not going to get, it's like, it's this or that, the easier life will be for you and the less stressed you'll be.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Not everything has a definitive answer. So now how do we move forward and not come back to where we are, right? How do you move forward from this? Like, you learn this and you just practice it, because if you do it right, are you trying to get other people to do it with you, or, you know, what's the goal here?
The goal is to keep this information and to practice. And the good thing about empathy is a skill. So it's not like we're talking about something that's innate, that either you have it or you don't. You know, empathy can be learned and practiced. And that's where it happens. Practice it. Practice it when you're watching television, when you're on social media. Practice it when you're driving. I often tell people, you know, the true test of who you are is what you do when nobody's watching.
Yep, absolutely.
So when you're driving your car and there's traffic, the person that says, no, you can't get in front of me, and you drive faster so the people can't get in front of you as they merge on the highway, or you're the person that says, oh, I know, you get in front of me, the next person can get in front of the next person.
Yeah.
So all of these things are self-reflective to tell you who you are. So that's kind of what I'd like to get back to on a mental health side, and I like for us to practice. On the educational side of things, we call it critical thinking. Mm-hmm. And I think the true goal of critical thinking is being able to separate your emotions from your thinking. And, you know, how often do we really do that?
Would you say the layman term for critical thinking is common sense?
Yes. Yeah. But you know what? I've stopped. I had a book. One of my first books, it was called Real Talk, Lessons in Uncommon Sense. Uh-huh. And so many people took offense to it. And, you know, after talking to individuals, it wasn't the book. It was really like a projection that they were told growing up that they lacked common sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what I do, I sometimes just kind of keep it a little bit scientific. Just say,
because that's what I mean. In that literally life, most of it, and like you said, it could just be somebody being like, "Well, of course, I'm not dumb. I know,
Right.
If you say common sense, it's like, oh no, I know, but no, you just got to think critically about the situation, and it becomes, oh, okay, yeah, you're right,
right.
Whoa, that's awesome. And so, what's next for you? You go out and you do talks, right? I mean, you've traveled all around the world from what I've read.
Yes.
That's kind of your thing.
Yeah, I did this research all the way back almost 30 years ago. My dissertation was on African American males' perception of law enforcement. It was a psychophysiological study whereby it wasn't pencil, we write down what we think others want to read later. Mm-hmm. The physiological responses were in this study, whereby I measured blood pressure, galvanic skin response, sweat. We had a lie detector. We had it all, and we measured it. And my philosophy was that the body listens to what the brain says, and the study. That was my second study. The first study that I proposed for my dissertation was actually law enforcement perception of African American males. And that was in order to help some of my relatives, some of my friends that were in law enforcement. I knew they were good guys, but law enforcement was getting a bad rap. Yeah. And people don't like it when I say, there's some professions that shouldn't have bad apples. But the truth of the matter is they're bad apples in a lot of professions. Yep. And, it's not necessarily everyone. But, I don't want to travel one day and my wife get a phone call and, Delta Airlines might, your husband didn't make it. The pilot was a bad apple. The rest of our fleet is great, but he just had the one bad apple. Yeah. So, there's just some professions that shouldn't have them. Education, law enforcement, our justice system, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So I was trying to do this groundbreaking study, but none of the police precincts would allow me to use.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
So I reversed it and came up with the empathy gap, came up with something called the racism reaction. That's getting a lot of legs right now with some of my master classes and virtual seminars these days. And the racism reaction is the fact that there's a physiological change in people suspect racism, and all of those emotions and all those things that I measured continue to spike. So I don't know if you've seen some of these post here lately where people are getting in fights in grocery stores and other things. Yep. And what's happening, that's my study. That's a classic example of my study. So a person will say, so the spike is already there.
Wait, I'm sorry. You cut out for half a second. People will say.
Okay. So say someone will say something derogatory to a black or brown person. Uh-huh. And the person suspects it was the N-word. Now, the racism reaction is already occurring. Yep. But however, the benefit of the doubt and some other things are taking place. So then you hear a person say it again. And what they want to be sure that this is what I'm feeling and what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. And the racism reaction isn't just, like I said, it's not just words. There's a physiological experience that's happening. Yeah. So then you hear that person say it, and then there's a fight that ensues. Yep. And that leaves training, or at least seminars and master classes for both sides. So, and that's where I am today. I'm always about bridging gaps and making things better than I found them.
Well, that's good, and I'm happy you're doing that because, me, myself, and I don't talk about it a lot in the podcast, I'm in law enforcement, and with everything happening right now, I find myself, like you're saying, where you had relatives in law enforcement, it's like, hey, look, I'm not a bad guy.
Exactly.
I hold every interaction that I have with everybody, the entire, as respectable as I can, and, I go with the situation, and it's not based on anything else other than human interaction. And so, it's a tough time to be in law enforcement, and I just do the best I can. And so, everything or anything that you can do to bridge that gap and be a solution, right, to what we have is welcomed. And so
well,
I'm
I tell
happy.
you, it's my dissertation actually has been posted on the research site of Old Dominion University. So if anyone, any of your listeners are interested, it's just putting in Dr. Adolph Brown, the plus sign, African American males' perception of law enforcement, and that the entire dissertation comes up from Old Dominion University's website.
Well, I'm definitely going to look that up. That seems like it's going to be a very, very interesting and insightful read, for sure. But thank you so much. Where can we find you? Your website or social media? Where can people look you up?
Sure, DocSpeaks.com. Like the doctor speaks, DocSpeaks.com.
Okay. And what's your Instagram? I know you have an Instagram. What is that?
Yeah, Adolph Brown.
Adolph Brown. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Adolph Brown III.
Wait, you know what? I appreciate you saying the third, but usually what I have to tell people is that it's Adolph with a PH and not a F.
Yeah, that's a good clarification.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. We appreciate you. I love these are, if you can ask Nicole,
this is a beautiful, great conversation
well, we have TV people on all the time, and, I'm like, I'll make this conversation fun, but I love insightful, philosophical, conversations and real things. So with doctors and professionals, these are my favorite, and I really, really, really enjoyed this one.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me.
Absolutely. Anytime. Well, thank you so much, and I wish you the best.
Likewise. Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed that conversation. It was so...
it's very insightful.
Oh, yeah, definitely insightful. And I think it's a very good timing for that conversation. And
Absolutely.
I think I learned a lot, and I loved his approach on things like... on every single thing. I could have listened to him talk for hours and hours. I want to listen to a recording of his book.
Yeah, we're sorry that the audio it'd be choppy at times, but I hope you got the gist of the conversation and most of it. And when I was talking to him, he had so many accolades. Like if you read his bio, it's ridiculous.
It's huge.
Yeah, that's why I was asking him, what do you call it? What do you consider yourself?
5 or 6 degrees as well. So.
So anyway, now we'll move into our weird
or
normal.
Okay, this weird or normal is brought to you by us. Right now it's done, it's happened, and I'm looking over to the right. Is it weird or normal to take a bite or a piece of something in your household and put it back? So that way someone may later want that other half, or maybe you'll come back later for the other half? Because I don't want a full cookie, so I didn't want a full chocolate chip cookie. So to my right, I have a cookie jar, and there is half of a macadamia nut and half of a chocolate missing because I wanted half of each.
It's a cake tray, so it has a glass top, so you could see inside of it.
Yeah.
So there's 3 cookies, and 2 of them are half eaten.
Well, I remember you told me that your sister or your mom used to eat the middle or the ends of the Oreos. I can't remember. You told me this.
She would eat the I can't remember. I can't remember how it was. But no, I don't know.
And put the other parts back. So,
it makes me not want to eat the other half of it makes me want to go grab a new one.
Yeah, for sure. You can definitely do that. But that's just mine for later. It's kind of how I see it.
Is that how you see it?
That's how I kind of see it. But if me and my mom will do that a lot, where the half, and my brother and my dad, I guess all of us, if there's a half there, it's basically 0 calories, so they'll eat that one and another one too. You know what I mean? So
the half is just extra.
Yes.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I normally, if I'm going to eat it, I want to eat the whole thing. I'm sorry, if you hear scratching in the background.
Can you get her down? She's about to fall off, and that's very scary to me. She's crazy. No, for the cookie situation, I do this at my house, my parents' house, the half is gone immediately. It's not a thing. Don't go back for it. No matter what it is, it's going to be gone. Here at home, Victor will not touch it, and it's fine. I'll go back for it the next day. So is this normal, or is this weird? Is it gross? Tell me, do you eat the whole cookie even though you don't want the whole cookie? Do you toss the other half? What do you do?
I don't know. For that's probably at some point that's probably going to get tossed if you don't eat it because it's going to get stale.
I'm going to eat it later though. It's my nighttime treat.
Oh yeah.
Oh, he's just like the kitty. He's just like gently playing with his face.
Yeah, Kitty's getting big, and soon enough here she's going to be gone to a good family. So I don't know. It's kind of bittersweet.
I'm very heartbroken. I can't think about it. Okay, Victor, what do you have for Spanish word of the day?
Spanish word of the day is galleta.
Galleta.
I don't know if I've said this one already.
Yeah, I think you have.
Let's see how
Accolades, graduation, intelligence.
Oh, you're on the right track, baby.
I'm on the wrong track.
Yeah, you are.
Okay, I'm just speaking out loud, though.
Okay, so this is not real guesses.
No.
It's okay,
Can you
Kitty,
say it again for me?
Kitty, say it for her. Galleta.
Galleta. Cake.
Close.
Cookies.
Cookie.
Cookie.
Galleta.
Dang.
Galleta.
Should have known. We just got done talking about cookies. And we know he doesn't think of one beforehand, so.
I just try to come up with them as it comes. What's your favorite cookie, babe?
My favorite cookie?
Yeah, if you had to pick one really?
Yes.
That's like an old person cookie.
Oatmeal raisin.
You know what? If they...
I love old person ice cream too, apparently. Butter pecans, apparently old people ice cream.
Yeah, she also likes coleslaw.
That's my favorite. I love sauerkraut and stuff.
Sauerkraut just smells bad. That just, for me, it's like, I don't know.
What's your favorite cookie? Oh, I know, peanut butter.
No, actually, that's not my favorite cookie.
It used to be.
It's never been.
Chocolate chip.
Chocolate chip. Actually.
So original.
You calling me basic?
Yes, that's what I'm going for. You're so basic.
Yeah, I'm so original.
No,
yeah.
You're not original. You're basic.
All right, so I'm going to read a review because you guys are so awesome, and without you, there's no us. And so here's a review by Sisters Forever 5. 5 stars, and it's called 3 heart emojis. After listening to your interview with Phil Kogan, I set my DVR to record Tough as Nails. Just had a chance to watch it, and oh my God, I love it.
Me too. I just watched the other episode last night.
I love that it is real people, the diversity of the individuals they choose, and no one goes home, allowing them to still earn money winning the team competitions. I think Nicole's dad should apply. Based on everything you have shared about his many talents and work ethic, I think he would kick A***. Love the podcast and look forward to listening each week, Amy.
Thank you. That's amazing. And I am actually really loving that show. I watched last night, and I had a lot of other things I should be doing, but I was not doing them. But yeah, I think my dad should totally apply. But thank you so much, everyone, for listening and tuning in every single week. We love to keep the guests very diversified and learning from reality TV to doctors. And, Victor loves his professional talk, so we'll try to get some more of those in the near future. Right, Vic?
Yes. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Easiest ways on the Apple Podcast. And you can listen to us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher. And you can always go to www.cococalientepodcast.com and you can check out our merchandise. Don't forget to follow us at Coco Caliente Podcast on Instagram and at Coco Caliente Pod on Twitter.
Thank you.